I've got to be so careful how I phrase this question, but the fact that you guys are all black, how important do you think it is to get your voices heard out in the wrestling culture?
Hey guys, this is Tempest from Wrestle Talk, and I'm reminding you to support Tom Talks Rubbish.
What's going on, guys? It's your boy, Tom Talks Rubbish, and stand back for another interview. This time, I'm joined by Phil Lindsay from the Grapsody podcast on Fightful. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So if we take this back, where does Phil first discover wrestling?
I first discovered wrestling probably in grade school. I think my first introduction was through the magazines.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a friend that collected WW magazine, and so that was my first foray into wrestling. And I was kind of like, "Yo, this looks cool." Like, I'll never forget the first one I saw. I had Undertaker on the front, and that was kind of my foray into the Attitude Era at that time because I had never watched wrestling before that.
Okay. So what was it about these magazines that attracted you to them?
I don't know. It just was something about like Undertaker at the time. This was like old school Undertaker with like the purple gloves and like the tie, and he still had Paul Bearer at the time. And it was just like, what is this? And it might have been just that it was something my friend was into. So I was like, oh, I want to watch just to see what he's into. But I ended up watching and really liking it.
So what sort of era are we talking about? Like Attitude Era, correct?
Yeah, this was early Attitude Era.
So one thing I'm always curious to know from my guests is if you discovered, say, Attitude Era wrestling at the age you are now with no prior knowledge of wrestling, do you think you would be into it as much? And then in the inverse of that question, if you discovered today's wrestling at the age you discovered the Attitude Era wrestling, do you think you would have gotten into it?
I don't know if this is a controversial take, but Attitude Era is kind of overrated, man. I understand why it's highly regarded because it was lucrative for WWE and everybody's making a lot of money. It was the boom period for wrestling for a reason. That was the most wrestling was in, and public consciousness. You could see wrestlers anywhere at that time. But like I feel like right now wrestling is better. Like just all around, like the matches are better. There are some things that aren't as good, like characters are not as emphasized certain places. So to answer your question, I think if I discovered the Attitude Era now and I didn't have any like connection to wrestling, I still would have enjoyed it because you still had larger than life guys like Austin or Rock. But I think with like the new era of wrestling, I think I probably would connect it to this more. Like if I discovered it without seeing anything beforehand, because I just feel like some things right now are better. We have more access to wrestling from more companies than just WWE.
Yeah. So it's like, for example, what we were discussing off camera. We, at time of recording, we have just seen probably one of the best shows of the year, and that was two promotions collaborating, which was AEW and New Japan, which was Forbidden Door. Do you think something like that could have happened in the Attitude Era, or do you think the business was too cutthroat back then?
I don't know if it would have been possible then because I don't know if the fan bases were as smart as they were. Because I think the reason that Forbidden Door worked is you can have a guy like Okada come out and the crowd knows him. I don't know if, the niche crowd that is into New Japan wrestling existed the same way it did during the Attitude Era. And I think that's a big part of the appeal of AEW for a lot of fans is that they don't really treat their fans like they're stupid. I
agree.
They're like, yo, like they don't have to go and put this vignette out to go, this is Okada. They pretty much know that their fan base knows who Okada is. And I mean, that could be to their detriment for people that are outside of that bubble. But I also feel like again, that's a part of why it worked. I don't think the Forbidden Door works the same way outside of the confines of, current wrestling and current wrestling fan base.
The way I described Forbidden Door to a friend of mine was it's not like the gateway drug in some ways to get you into wrestling, but it's sort of like the drug once you've been a wrestling fan for a while. Would you agree with that?
I definitely would agree. I think if I didn't have any experience watching any wrestling, I don't know if Forbidden Door would have hit the same for me, but because I'm a fan of so many other things outside of AEW, like New Japan or other things, like I definitely wouldn't have understood why Shibata coming out was such a big moment if I didn't watch New Japan beforehand.
I think that's a technological thing as well, though, because personally, I'm not a New Japan fan, but even I understood what a big deal that was because, like you say, even though I'm not a New Japan fan, we have so much more access to wrestling nowadays that you know what New Japan is, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. And I do think that it's not like the days of the message board. Like, I feel like Twitter has kind of replaced message boards. So, online wrestling discourse is everywhere now. So it's kind of impossible to not know who somebody like Okada is if you're online a lot. Like, if you're not an online fan, then I can see it. But like, if you talk about wrestling a lot online, then it's kind of impossible to not see these things.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on to your fandom, have you had like a lapsed period or what we would call like a dead spot in your fandom?
Oh, for sure. I would say like going into high school, I stopped watching for a while, and that was like mostly during the Ruthless Aggression era. For whatever reason, I just did get into it. But the thing that got me back in was Punk. Like, Punk definitely brought me back in after the pipeline.
Okay. So again, a question that I'm always curious to know from my fans is what is something from my guests, should I say, not my fans, is what is something that maybe you've gone back and watched for work from your lapse period that you're like, okay, I'm glad I wasn't a fan during this point because this is terrible. And then what is something that you're like, oh man, I'm sad I missed out on that.
I mean, there's a ton of WWE stuff from the Ruthless Aggression era. I don't know. I think the way that they were using the women then was really a disservice to a lot of the women that were there. And I'm kind of glad that I missed some of the creative rut they were in during the Divas era. And that's not to say all of the Divas era was bad or every woman that wrestled during that time was bad, but just creatively what they were doing with the women, I'm glad I missed a lot of that.
Yeah.
Now, stuff that on the same token, there are women from the era that I did miss out on that I went back and checked out, like Beth Phoenix, or like Eve Torres, or AJ. There were a lot of great women's wrestlers during the era that don't really get their flowers. I mean, I think I missed a good chunk of what made Cena special from that era as well, because I was just so down on Cena for so long. And so I think I missed some of what made, Cena.
Fair enough. So then you talk about Punk bringing you back with the pipe bomb. Have you been in from that point on, or have you had any more gaps?
Yes and no, because WWE does this thing where they'll have something good and they always find a way to keep you just long enough for them to mess it up. And they don't always do it, but every now and then. And Punk is prime example of that. Like, I feel like bringing him back the way they did and reintroducing him with the title after he wanted that Money in the Bank, there was a chance to do something so cool there. And then they just were like, here, let's introduce Nash in. Let's have him wrestle with Triple H again. It's like, I don't want to see that.
Yeah.
Now, of course, it ended up working out. He ended up getting a better title reign later, but I was definitely in and out for some of it. Like, I watched some of it, but some of it that I wasn't enjoying. I was like, well, I don't need to watch this.
Fair enough. So then, pivoting on to like your roles in the wrestling media, how do you first connect with your co-hosts Will and Reg to start doing Grapsody?
I've known Reg for a while. Reg, when his account was Black Wrestling's before he changed it to Righteous Reg. And that's just when he used to release the list from there, and he used to do a lot of other things. Way before I was at Bleach Report or anywhere else, like when I was just doing like small stuff for like lesser known sites, Reg would share all of my articles, and so that's kind of how we got cool. Like we connected off of that, and Will, he's been podcasting forever with RBR, and I did
17 years, I think I saw.
17 years. And so we did the post show for an AEW pay-per-view with RBR. I'm drawing a blank which one it was.
What was on the card? I might be able to help you.
That was the night with the exploding barbed wire match. That was
Revolution 2021.
Revolution. There you go. Yeah, that was the main event. Yeah, I definitely remember that. So when we did that post show afterwards, we talked for like hours that night. And I remember he was talking about what he was doing with RBR and stuff that he wanted to do. And at the time, Reg was doing like a smaller podcast through Black Wrestling's where every now and then he'd have me and Andrew Thompson on, and we talk about certain things. Like we did a year-end podcast, and at the time I was like, you should come and record something with us. It'd be kind of cool. And so, that didn't really come to fruition. But when he did his podcast on a Saturday, that was just him, and he would have a guest on. I came on again, and that was right after First Dance.
Okay.
And so we recorded, and we didn't think anything of it. And when you record on, I forgot the outlet we were on, but you could see everybody that was in the chat, and one of the names in the chat was T Khan, and we thought it was just like a joke. It's like this time. And so, like right after he recorded that, Tony Khan followed him, and so
wow,
interesting. And so he was like, it was one of those things where it worked so well that I was like, okay, maybe we should do another one of those. And so he did another episode. He had Reg on, and when he did the episode with Reg, at the end of it, Reg was like, yeah, we should record again, and we should do it with Phil. And so that was kind of like the light bulb moment for Will, where Will was like, we should make this like a permanent thing on Saturdays. And so he pitched it to me first, and I was in, and they pitched it to Reg. And once we were all in, he pitched it to Fightful.
How did it go pitching it to Fightful then?
I wasn't privy to that conversation, but I don't think that it was a hard shoot, because I had already known Sean, and I've already done like post shows with Fightful before that. Like I had done the Double or Nothing post show with him. And I was familiar with Sean's work, and we were already cool. Like we already were like on first name basis and like messaging each other before that. And so I think he already knew Reg from something else. So I think once he was familiar with the three of us, he was just like, yeah, sure. When do you want to do it? And, what do you need from me?
How important do you think I've got to be so careful how I phrase this question, but the fact that you guys are all Black, how important do you think it is to get your voices heard out in the wrestling culture?
I think it's extremely important. I
hope I phrased that question sensitively enough. I do apologize.
Oh, no, you're good. You're good. I think it's extremely important. I think that a big part of the reason why we wanted to do it is because, I just wanted to make something cool with my friends, regardless if it turned out to be good or not. It was just like, hey, I get along with these two guys. I want to make something cool with them. And then the other thing is, I think that we wanted to fill a void that we felt like there was like a specific podcast like ours that was missing. And I feel like there are a lot of Black wrestling podcasts. I don't want to sit here and say that, we wanted to do this and be like the Black wrestling podcast, because there are no other three guys recording together. There are, but in terms of, the way that the podcast is presented and the subject matter and everything, we didn't see a lot of that out there. We didn't see a lot of Black wrestling podcasts like ours that felt as accessible. And so we wanted to do something different, and we wanted to bring something different. And it feels like it's working because every time, we get feedback from, especially Black listeners, I feel like they understand what we're trying to do. And I feel like that is the most rewarding thing so far, is just getting other people that, see what the vision is and they're on for the ride with us. And I have definitely had conversations with a lot of listeners where they're just like, you guys are inspiring, you guys do this. And I do think it was a big deal for us to be at a big outlet, because there aren't really any Black wrestling podcasts at big outlets like Wrestling Inc. or some of these other outlets. And so I think us doing it on a big outlet also makes a difference.
Why do you think Fightful was the perfect place for Grapsody?
That is I know that there was a pitch on the table for another outlet. I don't know if I can put that out to the world. Maybe one day. But there was a pitch to another outlet. I don't know if it would have gone as well. But I think the reason why it works with Fightful is because not only is Fightful a big outlet, but they've kind of fostered a community of people that want to engage with their presenters. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think that our podcast would have been received as well if we didn't have the same kind of communal experience with our live shows every Saturday.
Fair enough. So do you think Grapsody is the sort of thing that, say, like, for example, Will was like, guys, I want to step away. Do you think Grapsody would work without the three of you? Or do you think it's like, if one of us steps away, we all step away?
That's a tough question. I don't know if I would want to do it without those guys. Because, I mean, the conversation I had when we first did it is essentially like, because, I mean, I've done tons of podcasts before this. It wasn't like I had a permanent podcast. I've been a guest on several podcasts. And a big part of the reason why I didn't have my own podcast, it was kind of like, well, I don't know if I didn't feel like I had enough to say on my own podcast, which kind of sounds crazy now because I record every Saturday. But I don't know. I felt like this felt like it was special. And I felt like if we were going to do it, it needed to be the three of us. And so it was kind of like, even if he brought it to me and he was like, hey, let's the two of us do it, I still would have said, we can't do this without Reg. And even like the conversation I'm privy to that he had with Reg, it was kind of like, well, I'm not doing it without Phil. And so It's like, I don't feel like, so to answer your question, I feel like if Reg stepped away, I don't think it would be the same. It would be hard for me to still do it without him. And the same with Will. Like, I feel like Will stepped away. It would be hard for us to not do it, because I don't feel like it would be the same without all three of us.
Fair enough. Who, I know you just said about it being an ensemble, but out of your two co-hosts, who do you feel like sometimes you have the best chemistry with? Or what do you think makes your chemistry different with your two co-hosts?
Well, my chemistry with Reg is definitely different because I've known Reg a little bit longer. And I also feel like, I say all the time, I think that Reg is, I sometimes feel like my biggest cheerleader. And I feel like he is my worst influence as well, because he can instigate things that I may or may not say if he may not be in the room. But if we're together joking about something, it might go longer than just like me just sitting, like watching something develop on my own. So I feel like a part of our chemistry is like, Reg being there. Like, I feel like Reg is a big part of what makes our podcast work. But at the same time, our podcast wouldn't work at all without Will, because he brings experience. I feel like he is he's the best mic we could possibly have on our podcast, and we all kind of play off each other because of either our varied experiences together or just like other things, just being Black, and that I may not know he'll understand, but it's kind of like unspoken understanding of certain things.
Yeah. I fully get that. So as we look at wrapping this up, because I do want to be respectful of your time, we're going to go into a segment now that I call generic questions. Those of you that have seen my videos before will know this is where I ask my guests their favorite match, favorite pay-per-view, favorite theme song, favorite tag team, and favorite tag team of all time. And basically now Phil will have a place to go, look, I've answered this. Please go watch this, just so you don't have to keep answering it on social media. So what's your favorite match of all time, Phil?
Oh man, favorite match of all time. There are so many. I think I'm going to go Punk and Bryan over the limit. I think that is my favorite match of all time.
Please elaborate on to why, because that is a deep cut that we don't get very often.
I don't know. It's just something because I am a big Punk fan, and I'm also a big Bryan fan. And for me, I wasn't that high on a lot of stuff that Bryan did before WWE. Before that, of course, I've gone back and watched some of his Ring of Honor stuff and other stuff now. But at the time when I first saw that match, I was like, "Yo, this is amazing!" Like, I still think that is like one of the best matches the two of them have had, and it's one of those like B level WWE pay-per-view matches that kind of goes under the radar. It's kind of crazy they didn't have more matches with WWE. I don't know, but there's something about that match. I always go back to that match and rewatch it.
Favorite pay-per-view of all time?
Favorite pay-per-view of all time? I am going to go, I don't know if this is controversial, but I'm going to go with All Out 2021 just because I was there. It was just so many things that happened that night. Just Bryan's debut. Getting to see Punk wrestle for me for the first time in person after he had not wrestled in 7 years. Just, man, it's just such a great pay-per-view top to bottom.
Yeah. Favorite wrestler or superstar of all time?
Wrestler of all time. I'm going to go with Bryan Danielson.
Favorite kid. As someone that didn't like his early stuff, what is it that you now appreciate about Bryan Danielson?
I just feel like in ring, pound for pound, he may be the best wrestler I've ever seen. He's obviously, to me, like known for his technical prowess, but he's just so versatile. I've seen him work so many different styles. He's one of the few people that I've seen get in a match with Brock and still make his style work in a Brock style match. I've seen him have like amazing matches with Kenny Omega at this point. Just you name it, this guy has been in the ring with like a who's list, and he always manages to get a great match out of him. The Roman match he had last year was amazing. I think that is easily the top match of Roman's reign as champion. That being the title versus career.
So
match.
the one on SmackDown.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
But he's great. When you go back and watch like those Kenta matches from Ring of Honor, Ring of Honor basically that's his home. Like he made his name there, and just like his run there as champion. Even some of the lesser known stuff he's done, it's all great. Just the fact that he has improved as a talker now, and he's actually a great promo now. And he's had so many moments that have definitely gotten me to emote. Like when I think of people that have like literally made me cry, there are not that many many wrestlers that I have cried, and he's done it twice. When he retired, when he came back and he gave the speech, and he was saying, "Fight for your dreams, and they'll fight for you." He's the greatest of all time, in my opinion.
I agree, because he's actually my favorite of all time as well. But favorite tag team of all time?
I am going to go with New Day, just because I think everything they've accomplished with WWE, in spite of a gimmick that should have never worked, but they made it work because those three guys are special. And I don't know, there's even like that correlation of those three guys that are friends, and they wanted to do something cool together, and they want to elevate their friend. Like there's a bunch of correlations to Grapsody and New Day. Like the fact that, there was this guy that was like, "Hey, you two guys come do this thing with me." it's going to work. I promise. And it worked in spades. And you look what it has done for all three of their careers. And just the fact that they're genuine friends. And I don't know, man, like I could be just, it's part of like the emotional connection I have with them as well.
I see what you're saying, though. I'd love to see a Grapsody New Day crossover now. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, it's just so many things. Like Kofi is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. He's probably my favorite WWE champion. And so it's just so many great moments that they have given us over the years. And I mean, the stats don't lie. Like the longest reigning WWE Tag Team Champions. I mean, man, the list of things they've done, the Hell in a Cell matches they've done, the trios matches they've done together. I mean, and I feel like they could have done even more than that.
Yeah. And then as we look at wrapping this up, favorite theme song of all time?
Favorite theme song of all time? I don't know if this is a cheat, but I am going to go with Cult of Personality just because of what Cult of Personality means for Punk's career. And I don't know, it could be also just recency bias and just being in the arena the first time it played again at First Dance. It's just, I don't know. Yeah, I'm going to go with Cult of Personality.
Fair enough. And as we look at wrapping this up, Phil, the question I end all my interviews on is with YouTube, with podcasting, with social media in general. We're all sort of going to live forever in some sort of way. So what is one video or podcast that you want the good people to check out? And then what is one that you're like, if you could avoid that, I would appreciate that.
I would say from Grapsody, I would say check out our episode from New Year's Day. We weren't supposed to record that episode. I think that's still our most viewed episode to date. And that was the episode we talked about the swole stuff. And that was Captain Sean Dean came on for a little bit to talk with us.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was, I think that is probably one of our best episodes. At least every time I hear people, I've gotten a lot of listeners that say they started listening to us after that episode. So I would probably go with that one. Episode to avoid. I don't know if we have an episode to avoid or a moment to avoid. No, I don't think we do.
Okay. That's just a question that I like, just because it balances out the universe. Do you know what I mean?
I'm sure there are some tweets somewhere that people I probably could have taken back or deleted.
Fair enough. And then as we wrap this up, I obviously want to say thank you to Phil for coming on. And where can the good people find you as we wrap this up and your content?
Of course, you can follow me at PhilDO616 on Twitter. You can watch Grapsody every Saturday at noon Eastern on Fightful's YouTube channel. Of course, that's me. That's Righteous Reg and Will Washington. You can find my writing at Bleacher Report and Daily DDT, a bunch of other outlets that I'm probably forgetting. I think that's it. I think that's all of my plugs.
It's well worth doing, guys. So if you guys like this video, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Tom Talks Rubbish. Follow me on Twitter at Tom Talks Rubbish. Follow bodyslam.net on Twitter and the Wrestle Watch podcast on Twitter for my show with Cassidy Hayes, the Wrestle Watch podcast. And subscribe to bodyslam.net to catch the Wrestle Watch podcast. And I will see you in the next one. Bye. Bye.